Hey guys, hope everyone's doing really well today or tonight. I wanted to make a quick video on creating wealth through equity investments. Now, what I find really interesting about this, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but a lot of people don't understand the importance behind equity investments. Now, equity investments might be, what you would normally think of like the stock market, real estate, but there's also other ways that you can invest into equity building businesses or other ventures, which we'll get into in a second. But it's really important that you guys understand the basics here, not only because it's super interesting, but also because it will be super vital to actually building up wealth, for yourself and then also for your family and so forth. So let's get into it. Now, investing in equity and ownership. Equity, for those that don't know, is ownership in an asset. So it could be through an investment, or it could be through building a business yourself that grows over time and or cash flows over time. So it's essentially right. Like for an example, if you build a cafe and it does really well, and then in 5 years, you're looking to sell it, people will, they'll have a number for what that business is worth. Now, different businesses are worth different things, depending on the sector, depending on various different elements within it. But you've essentially built equity through running that business, creating goodwill, people wanting to purchase coffee from that cafe, and that's how you've been able to build equity. Now, another example would be purchasing stocks in the share market. Now, you're not necessarily building anything, but you're investing at a time where you think there's value, and then over time, that company becomes more valuable, or the stock market, the S&P, the overall index becomes more valuable, and then you sell it to someone else who sees value in it at the time, but you saw it a little bit earlier and you were able to make some money on that. Some other really common ways that people invest into equity and ownership is through real estate. So you might own a home, or you might own a unit, and without realizing it, you're actually building equity every day. If you've purchased right, and if you bought it at a good enough valuation, or I guess you bought it where it's not too overpriced. So you'll be building equity in that every day. Another option is cryptocurrency. A lot of people invest into crypto recently. Bitcoin, I believe, just went over 100,000 US. So that was really great for people who invested early and were able to build some equity in that. And another example is a business, like I mentioned earlier, a cafe or even a YouTube channel. A lot of people are investing in YouTube channels because within the right niche they can cash flow really well, and obviously, social media is growing and growing every single day. So it's a sector or a medium that's growing rapidly. I've also mentioned here, some risk-seeking investors will also use private equity or venture capital or crowdfunding, where it's not as liquid and new businesses or real estate projects can likely go bankrupt. So this is more for those that have built up wealth already and are looking to deploy some capital. Now, in Australia and I believe the US, there are some specific regulations around who's actually allowed to invest in things like VC, venture capital, or private equity. And that's generally those that either have a really high income, normally above 250,000 to 300,000, if I'm not mistaken, or those who have built up a large enough nest egg or wealth, normally about $1 million, I believe, is what they're looking for. So those are some other ways that people can build equity and ownership through those kind of risky ventures. And these are generally startups or businesses that maybe they've had a really bad run with management, and you're able to kind of purchase that at a discount and then build it up from there, or put people in place to build it up from there. Now, just as a general rule as to why equity is so important is because people are generally paid by the hour, whereas equity is just paid through capital growth and income. There's no cap necessarily on equity and ownership in a business. Businesses like PayPal or Tesla or Apple or Microsoft, they all start off really small, and being able to either have a job there and build up equity, as part of your pay package or your salary, um, or being able to build that business yourself really early on. That that growth, that capital growth, and that ownership equity is just you, there's just no time you could possibly put into it yourself in terms of an hourly wage that would bring out such a capital growth. It's not really possible for one person to do, which is why it's so important that you understand it, because you can work hourly and do your work at your job, that's fine, but being able to on the side also build up equity investments, things that don't rely on your time, will be super important. And that's how most people you know build wealth over time. um, and I mean, look, especially nowadays with so much education being thrown around, social media, books, magazines, pretty much anywhere you go, you're able to find free education on how to invest, how to grow wealth. So it's meant that it's really easy for everyone to invest now, but it's also meant that because more people are investing, those that aren't investing are even further being left out. It's almost become a normal thing to invest now. A lot of apps are making it really easy, like Stake, um, Perla, I think, is another one. In Australia, there's lots of different ways you can invest now. Especially that's been it's easier than ever now. Now, how can you acquire and grow equity investments? Now, like I mentioned earlier, we all have access to the stock market, either the Australian stock market, the US stock market through something like Stake, um, or many other stock markets in the world you can invest into. Um, I've heard some really crazy ones, like people investing in African stock markets, but or Asian stock markets. But I guess if it works, it works. Um, Real estate's another really common way. We all have access to real estate. Obviously, it might be a little bit trickier than investing in the stock market, because there's usually a deposit that's at 10 to 20%. Or in some markets, some developing markets, there's no such thing as loans, and you have to pay cash. And cryptocurrency, for example, Swift is an option that makes it really easy to invest. But there's a million options out there. Now, you may only have access to some equity opportunities to growing your wealth or networking, and that was kind of what I was alluding to before with the venture capital, or even the YouTube channel investments. Like, these businesses, you can really only get into if you're looking on certain websites, or if you're talking to certain people, and you're kind of networking with that group of VC investors, or people who are looking to leverage some income and have it grow 100-fold really quickly, or risk losing it all. And income growth, obviously, the more you kind of are able to grow your income, you're going to meet new people. You're going to obviously have access to do VC investing or private equity investing sorts. So that's really important as well. Now, obviously, I've listed a lot of different options for equity investments, but it really, if you were looking at picking what's right for you, there's obviously going to be different types of investments depending on your income, how risk averse you are, and how involved you want to be. A few things to note. Now, for example, cryptocurrency is a little bit more risky than, say, investing in the S&P 500. Real estate, depending on the country, depending on the area, could be a little bit more risky, or even a little bit more safe than the S&P, for example. But the S&P 500 is, in my opinion, the golden standard for um, risk averse investing, where you're able to kind of grow your wealth slowly over time. It's not going to do anything crazy, but it's very reliable, and it has been reliable. Obviously, history doesn't confirm what will happen in the future, but from what we can see, it's been really great. Now, another way to grow, obviously, it can either be through time. So, for example, the S&P over the last 30 years has returned about 8% per annum on average. Different real estate markets over the last 30 years have returned different amounts, but you're also able to add value to equity investments through actually doing things yourself and getting in there. So, some examples could include renovating a real estate project. It could be developing on the land. It could be subdividing the land. Another option could be actually getting into a failing business and creating a social media platform for that business. It could be employing the right people. It could be educating on what exactly this business needs to do to grow. So there's a million different ways you can kind of add value yourself, and that should be done alongside the growth over time. Now, when I say adding value yourself, it doesn't always have to be yourself, like doing the work. It could be you're providing capital to bring people in that have that knowledge themselves. So it will require you doing something, but doesn't necessarily mean all the hard work. It could be through providing income or a pay package to help that business grow. Now, when it comes to equity investments, some risks and considerations. Obviously, nothing is absolutely perfect, but if you're looking long term, then I think this would be really great because the real wealth in the world is really made through capital growth and not an hourly wage, like we discussed earlier. A lot of people are making lots of money through building businesses, through building real estate portfolios, through compounding those S&P 500 returns, reinvesting those dividends over time. Um, Now, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is a long-term strategy for most people, but it is how most people in the world build wealth through being patient. Um, Understand that there are obviously market conditions that influence your investment over time. I've added here interest rates, and that could be, for example, if you're looking to invest in real estate, if the interest rates are really high, this might make it a little bit trickier to get funding or even make your investment profitable. But other market conditions, for example, if a new law was presented for cafes or a new law was presented that stopped you from doing something in your business, obviously this is massive and could be a massive stoppage to whatever you're looking to grow. Another consideration that I think is really important is to pick your equity investments based on your goals, your risk tolerance, level of involvement, and liquidity. Now, liquidity is a really interesting one because a lot of people will invest in real estate, invest in a business, and if they're looking to extract that value, say 1, 2, 3 years down the track, even 5 years, 10 years down the track, they might not be able to because that liquidity is locked away. So this is very different to the S&P 500, where you're able to, at the click of a finger, take out your profits. So just keep that in mind that some things are very liquid and some things are not very liquid at all. And obviously, some things involve more of your time. So if you were scouting individual businesses versus the S&P 500, and the individual businesses reading their reports, their annual reports, doing different analysis on them is going to take a lot more time than just investing in the S&P 500. And I'll leave with this, that it is really important to educate yourself and invest where you feel comfortable over time. Now, initially for me, I felt really comfortable investing in the S&P 500 and a couple of other businesses that I was recommended by a friend. Now, over time, I've been able to invest in real estate, in some more risky, or I guess up and coming markets, and even cryptocurrency. And it's worked really well for me. Not to say that it will work well forever, but for now, it's worked really well, and that's been because I've educated myself and I've understood the risks, and I've weighed it up, and I've said, yep, let's do it. So that wouldn't have been me initially, but over time, I was able to develop that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Equity investments are super important, whether it's just simple like the stock market or whether it's a little bit more advanced like VC or crowdfunding investments. Hopefully, you guys have gotten some value out of this. And if you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.